All right, we're gonna get this show on the road. So first and foremost, wanted to thank everyone that's been able to hop on so far, and I hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy at home during these kind of crazy times that we're having. Um, oh, thanks for confirming, everyone, that you could hear me. Good to know. I'm not talking on mute. So yeah, today wanted to kind of talk a little bit about enabling remote work solutions and Microsoft Teams. So obviously with what's going on with this pandemic, there's been a huge paradigm shift in the way we're working and where we're working. And as I talk right now, I think a lot of us are probably sitting at home. So I wanted to speak a little bit today about Microsoft Teams, and some of the things that we're doing to help our customers, and also what Microsoft Teams could offer you. So here's just a high level agenda of what I have planned for today. So gonna dive in at the very highest level of a Teams overview and really what Microsoft Teams could offer you. And then after that, kind of defining the modern workplace. So in terms of technologies, what Microsoft has to offer, and kind of their suite of modern workplace technologies that they've built around Teams and everything. And then the last three pieces you see here is we've been doing a lot of work at Talon with adoption of Microsoft Teams. So really helping companies adopt at a high level and then scale it across their departments based on ways they collaborate. So we'll walk through the different phases there of assessment, proof of concept, and then also the scalability phase. So just at the very highest level, Teams is kind of this solution where you're able to collaborate on multiple levels with people both inside and outside of your organization. So many of you may use many different platforms to do some of these things listed below, like chat, collaborate, meetings, or calling. And what Teams really does is bring all those together into one interface. So there's the chat features, the ability to collaborate on documents, and there's also the different meetings and calling features. So some of you may use things like Slack for chat, and then you might use Ring or Zoom Central for your calling and meetings, and then something completely different to collaborate. So Teams is really seeking to bring together all the collaboration technologies you use under one hood and get you going that way. So just at a high level, some of the features. So in terms of chat, it's really a threaded and persistent chat, and you could really it's nice because you could chat, call, and meet across really any device. So like I know for me, like I have Teams on my phone, I have Teams on my laptop, and I'm able to kind of access and chat when I'm traveling or when I'm out and about, or even when I'm offline away from my computer. And then another nice feature that it has that most these kind of platforms have now is being able to mention someone. So if if you really need someone to do something for you, it's nice to be able to give them that mention. And then in terms of collaborating, there's really a lot that Teams offers, and it's kind of what Teams was built for, right? So in terms of collaboration, you have all these different tools in there, and applications that you're able to use. So, whether you're working on an Excel document or a Word document, it's a place that, you could collaborate within your department, across departments, and even externally. And there's also some great application integration within Teams with things like Planner or OneNote. So I know like a lot of project management teams, they leverage Teams heavily, and they actually use the planner to help kind of break up the tasks within their projects. So there's a lot to explore there. And then, with meetings and calling, a lot of people tend to sometimes use separate vendors, like I said, Ring Central or something, but Teams really seeks to bring all these things together. And then with the meetings, it supports private channel meetings and also external meetings as well. And with the meetings now, the Teams has really added a lot of features. So I know one of my favorite features that they just added is that the ability to change your backgrounds, and then there's also a lot of features that they're adding around the amount of people you're able to see. So it's really an immersive meeting experience, being able to share your screen, share documents, whiteboard, all things like that. And then in terms of the calling, a lot of people are starting to actually leverage Teams as their kind of their phone line, and getting away from those desk type phones. So I know for me, like if someone calls my office line, it rings right to Microsoft Teams on my computer, and if I'm away from my computer, it will actually ring right to my phone. So it really has a nice way of integrating all these ways that we collaborate and communicate with each other, and that's just some of the features that it provides. So then, just in defining modern workplace a little bit, we talk about the Office 365 suite of technologies. So, when you purchase Office 365, there's a ton you get, everything from, the whole entire Office suite with Word, Excel, and everything there, PowerPoint. But then there's these other tools you get, around SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive. And the biggest question we always get at Talon anytime we're doing adoption is, well, we have SharePoint and we have Teams and we have OneDrive. Like, when do I use each one of these, and when's the most appropriate? And that's really, one of the core focus areas of our teams and modern workplace sort of adoption engagements. So in general, I could tell you a little bit about what we tell people about each one of these. So for SharePoint, it's generally used as more of a document library for static or completed documents, or simply for content or static pages with information that everyone needs access to. So you'll see, like, in some cases, like HR departments, they have a lot of information that needs to be readily available. In most cases, it's usually static or updated on an annual basis, and people just need that one-stop shop to go there. And then, when you look at Teams, it's a little bit different of a use. So Teams is generally used for collaboration, like I was mentioning before, around documents, or amongst groups within a company, or even outside your organization. So obviously, documents are stored there, but typically they're documents that are always actively being worked on, or you need to collaborate across departments on. So it's normally, and it's really nice to be able to collaborate within there, because as you saw on the features page before, it offers a lot of functionality around chat and meetings, and tracking the projects, to kind of have that all in one space under Teams. It's a good way to collaborate, and SharePoint doesn't really offer as much as that interface for collaboration that Teams does. And then the last kind of piece here is OneDrive. So OneDrive, I mean, in general, it's mostly, from what I've seen, used for personal user documents, or if you just want to share a document with a very specific set of people. Like, I want to send this document to just 2 people, and share it through OneDrive, and you don't want it out on Teams or anything. That's usually the use case there. But then all 3 of these kind of play together nicely. So like with Teams, like anytime you create a team, in the background, it's actually SharePoint Online. So, you're creating, in essence, a SharePoint site in the back end. And then, OneDrive, you're able to kind of sync everything from SharePoint into OneDrive, and kind of have it all fit together. So I guess moving on a little bit into the adoption pieces. So and what we've been doing a lot with our customers. So phase 1 is kind of the assessment phase, and this is where we meet with a lot of the key stakeholders, at your organization. So we try and start at a higher level, and then go down from there. So when you're looking at Teams adoption, like, there's basically 3 sort of pillars that you want to look at. And the first is collaboration landscape. So in doing that, like Talon, we really tried to understand the ways that our customers collaborate in an organization. So like whether it's how you collaborate, within your departments, across departments, or and even with external users, and how effectively do you really feel like you're collaborating now? And then we start to draw the parallels to what functionality in team. And the second piece of that is really the governance and the configuration pieces. So um, in doing this, we consider a lot of different things in terms of how you want to lock down your team. So, there's a bunch of different settings to consider of who you want to be able to contribute to teams or create new channels. And we kind of go over this whole entire sort of governance documentation and really walk down it with you. And then in terms of that, we really start to establish like a baseline for governance around teams for your organization. So a lot of that is mostly considerations around, who you're going to share documents with, external users and things of that nature. And with a lot of it, what we've noticed is some of the governance things may vary by department. So as we scale department to department, the governance, there will be a general governance documentation, and then there will be, kind of varying ones for the different departments based on some of the settings that you want to use. And then the last piece we really try to evaluate is organizational readiness. So what that really involves is, we like to take kind of an inventory of who's already using Teams at your company, who may be some of the power users, and then in terms of Office 365 and your Office 365 groups you may already have, can we possibly leverage some of those to help you create some of the teams that you want to have? And then the last piece is scalability. So really, how ready are you to start with one group and then roll it across multiple departments? So just to dive into some scenarios, so in that last slide, I kind of showed you those three sort of pillars, and then these scenarios are just to kind of outline some of the things that people and clients are considering when they're looking at governance and adoption, and these scenarios are kind of based on different types of organizations or I guess groups that may be restrictive or balanced. So I got a couple friends with me here today, Bob, Carol, and Aaron. So we'll walk through some of the scenarios here. So for teams and messaging, if you look here, so Bob works at a very regulated company. So to make things easier, he's disabling integration for third-party file storage, and they don't want to use any Giphies or stickers for HR policies. So in terms of messaging, like there's a lot of restrictive things that you could put around the messaging within the settings. There's some features that allow you to after you send a message to be able to change it. Those are things that you could choose to turn on or off. Um, and then, in other situations, there may be, very restrictive types of guardrails you want to put on. And then there's, other organizations that may want to really keep things open. And then in terms of meetings, there's a bunch of different options. So for Bob that you see up there, he kind of requires meeting participants to be identifiable. So there's no anonymous meeting joining. So again, a very restrictive nature. And then kind of the middle ground there is a subset of users have access to sensitive information. So you may want to lock down the ability to perform screen sharing in certain situations. And then the final one there is kind of, again, keeping things kind of open. and allowing people to, share as needed, and really making all the meeting settings available to all users. And then this is definitely, guest and external access is something that, from what I've seen, it really varies by company, and even within one company, it could really vary by department. So there's one of our customers that they work with a lot of third-party vendors within IT and also within other groups. So it was important for them to find ways to kind of allow those external vendors to have the access they needed to documentation or anything that was needed for projects that they may be working on. So if you look at the top there, you know, you could be very restrictive and selective with who you collaborate with, or you could really kind of try to keep it open. So it's another very important part, because we do understand that you're not just collaborating within your own organization, but many of us obviously collaborate outside our own four walls. So having the ability and options to lock it down in different ways based on the team that you're part of, or certain channel features, is another thing that Teams offers. And then another one is creating teams. So there's multiple ways to kind of create teams, and also keep it open or keep it very restricted. So some companies, what they do is they really want to lock down the way teams are created. And they don't keep it open, so anyone could just create a team. It would have to go through like an IT ticket, and some people may be really strict on the naming conventions, and things like that. So if you're looking at like department level teams, there may be certain naming conventions your organization wants to use. And then there's other companies we work with that they just want to keep teams completely open. They want to allow users to create teams at ease, and be able to do that when they have a need for a team. The one thing I will say with keeping it open is, like, you'll really want to define, at least to each group that you're working with that is using Teams, like really the best practices, and when you should be creating teams. So like for one of our customers that we worked with, they wanted to do a team per department, but then they realized that they collaborate a lot internally, so across departments. So they did this idea of like a project team. So when you'd create a new project team, you'd be able to select the users from individual departments and create that under a new project, to allow those users across departments to collaborate. So just being clear on the guidelines when you do keep it open, so you don't end up having thousands of teams created, and most of them maybe not being used. And then another thing to consider is really, there's the last two here: retention and then expiration policies. So there's a handful of settings within Teams around the retaining and retention of any of the content or documents in there. So and data for that matter. So for strict companies that need to keep everything for 7 years, there's retention policies you could put in place for that. And then there's some companies that don't really implement any sort of retention policy. And then in terms of expiration policies, kind of similar. There's a bunch of different kind of like life cycle parameters you could put in. So, you know, at the top there's some organizations that don't want to have any stale teams. So that kind of goes back to what I was talking about a little bit before, which was, you don't want to keep teams so open that you're creating all these teams and then you have no way to kind of monitor it. So some people kind of set these requirements that it has to renew a team every 90 days to kind of keep things fresh in there and do a clean out. And then there's different expiration policies you could set. And then, some organizations choose not to set any of those expiration policies and really assess it more manually on a manual basis, just to make sure that no content is really getting expired or deleted that people may still need. And then to dive into phase two, so proof of concept. So this is really where, once we've identified these high level things in terms of governance configuration, we tend to start with, let's start with a group within your organization that is most active with Teams and really heavily using it and probably has a lot of power users. So for one of the companies we work with, we naturally, for them, started with IT, and actually now we're moving on to other groups like operations, marketing, based on them identifying that. But what we did with one of our customers within IT is we kind of went through this 5-step sort of process. So at the very highest level, we understood how they collaborated within their own department and then also with others. And we kind of identified these different types of teams. So they obviously wanted their own department team. And from there, we kind of helped them build that out and the different channels they wanted in there. And also, the capabilities around making channels private versus public. So, for leadership within IT, they wanted to make some of the things within their private, so other users that are members of the team can't get in. So, those are some of the things we considered. And then, like I had just mentioned, channel configuration. So really configuring those channels within their department team, and making sure that, the ones that are private need to be private and everyone has the right access. And then the third thing was kind of app selection and configuration. So like I mentioned earlier, there's a ton of apps that are integrated within Teams. So for them, we kind of said, okay, in IT, what applications are you using already? So I guess like in an example, like for sales, for a sales department, you may want to integrate with Salesforce and all these other apps. So, that's when we go department by department, those are the kind of things we consider is, what apps are you using that you can maybe integrate into Teams and kind of make it more uniform for everyone. And then once we kind of define the types of teams, the channel configuration, and the apps that needed to be integrated, we then took a stab at setting up those initial teams. So the department level team for IT, and then like a sort of POC for project level teams as well. And then from there, we were really able to get that initial IT department team set up. And then after that, we helped them with the rollout to the rest of IT. So we kind of showed them what we came up with. And throughout the process, we were obviously getting feedback. And then we were able to kind of show each group within IT the final sort of configuration that we landed on and interface and everything. And then, so moving on to scaling teams. Basically, with the customer, one of the customers we're working with now, they were pretty much wrapped up with the IT group, and we're moving on to now the operations group and then one other group. So what I would say is it really starts with, the best way to do it is to really start with that first group and use them as a baseline. So if you're able to identify that first group, whether it's IT or another group that's heavily using Teams, it's usually a good exercise to go through with that group first, and then you could kind of start to use that group as a baseline to scale to the next team. And if you see on the screen here, it's kind of this repeating pattern of, you're defining the user group, you're doing the POC, that was kind of outlined in the slide before, of going through all those items and making sure that you kind of have them nailed down. And then at the end, implementing. So as you go through each group and POC with each group, you're implementing, and then the goal is by the end, all all of your departments or everyone in your organization will have a standard way of using Teams, whether it's within their department or cross departments. And we're kind of seeing that now with a couple of our customers that we're working with. So in terms of getting started, there's many ways you could do it. I kind of pointed out at a very high level some of the things you should be considering. And then, obviously at Talon, we do a lot of this work with our customers, and in doing this, we've had a lot of success in a couple of our customers and actually scaling teams and having this approach to it. So, and especially now with what's going on, collaboration is more important than ever, and especially with remote work and enabling a good remote work solution. I think Teams really checks a lot of the boxes for organizations that are making this transition. So I will encourage you, to reach out to me if you have any additional questions on how maybe Talon could help, or if you just have some questions that you're just like an immediate answer to, and you're thinking of doing a lot of this yourself. That's fine. There's some additional resources here on Microsoft Teams adoption tools and different sort of frameworks. And we'll send this deck out to everyone that attended. And in closing, I just wanted to thank everyone, that was able to hop on today and join. And I hope you all continue to stay healthy and safe during this crazy time. So thanks, everyone.